Hey, what's up, guys? It's Bakes here, and thank you for joining me for this episode of my top 10 series, being my top 10 random horror reviews of 2024, or another way of putting it, top 10 horror movies that I reviewed in 2024. So I know I do this video every January at the start of every year on my channel, but just a reminder for those who don't know, this is not a list of my favorite horror movies from the year 2024. That's a video that will be coming up later in this month. This is just a list of 10 notable movies that I reviewed in 2024 as part of my random horror review series. Now, just like previous years, this list is not put together by my highest rated movies. At the end of every review, I give them a score out of 10. It's not based on how high I scored them, or even, in fact, not based on, how good of quality the movies are. But just like I said earlier in previous years' videos, it's just more so around ones that I found to be more notable or stood out to me, or even ones that I feel are a little bit underrated or grew on me since the last time I seen them. So to pretty much simplify it, it's pretty much a list of 10 horror movies that I reviewed last year that I felt like bringing up again, and I enjoyed checking out again upon rewatch. So that's pretty much what this list is. I just thought I'd put that out there again just for those who are unaware. But without delaying any longer, because it is a pretty simple list, let's get into it. My top 10 random horror reviews of 2024. Coming in at my number 10, I have The Hills Have Eyes remake. So starting this list with absolutely no surprises at all. I almost thought it was too obvious of a pick to even include on this list, but if you watched my review for this movie, you would have gathered how much I really do like this film. Even going into that review and rewatching it again to put my review together, I already knew that it was a favourite modern gritty remake of mine. I've seen this movie countless times. But I am going to kind of cheat a little bit here with my number 10 and kill two birds with one stone, because I want to give an honourable mention to The Hills Have Eyes Part 2, the remake obviously, because I also gave that one a rewatch for a review last year. And because out of the two movies, I very rarely come back to part 2, so much so that it had been ages since I gave it a rewatch last. But like I said, I also reviewed that movie last year, following the first, and I thought, even though it's not as good, it is probably just as entertaining at least. So maybe it was probably more worthy of a spot on this list, when you take into account what I said in the introduction, bringing up probably more notable, underrated ones that surprised me through the year. But like I said, I'm killing two birds with one stone, and I do think the first one is the more solid and well-rounded of the two. So coming in at my number 10 for rewatches through last year and reviews, I have The Hills Have Eyes remake. Continuing with back-to-back remakes, here I have the Hellraiser remake. I wanted to include this one on my list because I genuinely think this is a good movie, and more so a good reimagining of the Hellraiser premise. Is it as good as the OG? No, in my opinion it's not, but it doesn't mean that it's a bad movie either. And with this remake, I'm happy that they didn't just do the exact same thing. Though not everything worked in this movie, I still think a lot was added that was at least appreciated. David Bruckner directing this one, I think it does very much suit his style, and a lot that he chooses to add to this Hellraiser and Cenobite universe I think was pretty cool. I wanted to include this one because I think it's a remake that got too much hate upon release, and maybe it's not what a lot of people expected or wanted from a Hellraiser remake, but as I said, it's still not a bad movie though. Yes, I'm choosing the original Hellraiser 6 out of 7 days of the week for a rewatch, but this is like kind of its own thing in a weird way. It's worthy of its own praise and its own merits, and as I said, I think a lot of people sort of overlook this movie. So coming in at my number 9, I have the Hellraiser remake. Coming in at my number 8 is the movie that I watched for my Halloween edition episode last year. Here I have The Monster Squad. I spoke about this in my review, but I never saw this movie as a kid, therefore not much nostalgia for this movie like I know a lot of people do have. But even though I saw this movie for the first time when I was an older teenager, like somewhere around the age of like 17, 18 maybe, this has still been enjoyable ever since the first time I gave it a watch. I think I said this in my review, but when I was revisiting this movie for the Halloween episode, I actually watched this this movie twice back to back with no issue at all. Technically because I fell asleep. No fault of the movie, I was just really fucking tired. But I fell asleep with like only 15 minutes left, and I could have just picked up from where, I remembered I was up to and continue watching the last 15 minutes, but it was the morning after and I just sort of went, fuck it, I'm just going to watch it again from the start because the movie is just that much fucking fun. It flies by. It's just so fun and charming. It's a horror adventure, well suited for a good Halloween movie to watch with the family. It's good for younger kids and obviously older kids alike. Along the lines of something like The Goonies, but mix it with Universal monsters. I'm sure everyone knows the Monster Squad, so I'm just retreading things that people already know, so I'll keep this one sort of short and wrap it up. Coming in at my number 8 was the Monster Squad. Coming in at my number 7 is Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. Now, this might be too obvious of a pick for many of you guys, because it's really considered a great, however you look at it, a great killer animal movie, a great from Alfred Hitchcock himself, just an overall classic of the genre, however you look at it. But for me, this was a big surprise upon rewatch, because for the longest time, I considered this movie to be honestly a little bit overrated and kind of boring. In my defense, the last time I watched this movie before checking it out for the review, I was much younger, but regardless of that, this time around it grew on me immensely. Now, I still don't think the movie is perfect. Not saying that I hate it or anything. I think the movie is really fucking good. But it does go above and beyond for, at the end of the day, a movie that is about killer birds. The way that Hitchcock writes the characters and human drama and somehow manages to make seagulls and crows genuinely scary and suspenseful. He does a really good job. I know I'm praising a movie that a lot of people would say, has been praised to death, but like I said, this one grew on me a lot, and I said in my introduction I'd go back over movies that grew on me through this list, and one of them is The Birds. So coming in at my number 7, again, is Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. Coming in at my number 6, I have the movie Rosemary's Baby. Now, this one admittedly is a bit of a cheap pick because it's fucking Rosemary's Baby, one of, if not the greatest horror movie of all time. But also for that reason, I couldn't leave it completely off this list because it's just too good to ignore. But as I say that, at the same time, it's too obvious of a pick to be my number 1, so dropping it somewhere in the middle of today's list I think is fine. But if this list was ranked on what is actually the best movie I reviewed last year, I mean, this is undoubtedly number 1. I think for my review, this is actually the highest score I've ever given a movie through any of my reviews, but again, that's a given because this movie is just fucking perfect. The atmosphere, the setting, the score, the characters, you name it, this movie does it insanely well. Like I said, this is Rosemary's Baby, so I'm not going to harp on it because everyone fucking knows this movie, and if you somehow have been living under a rock and have never checked it out, go and do yourself a favor. Like I said, maybe too obvious of a pick to make this list, but also too good of a movie to completely ignore. So my number 6 goes to Rosemary's Baby. Coming in at my number 5, I have the movie Tombs of the Blind Dead. Now, this one was a fun and pleasant surprise, just because 85% of the movies that I review for my random horror review series, I have at least seen once before. Most of the time they're second time watches, but this was a first time watch, and also one that I knew sort of little about, but I had a great time with it. Still currently, I haven't checked out any of the sequels, but I am very keen to get around to them. It's just kind of hard to find copies of them at the moment, if I'm being honest, but this movie was just really fucking cool. Essentially a zombie film, but the zombies are knights. They're also kind of crossed with vampires in a way because they drink blood. They ride around on horses and swing swords, and obviously they're blind, so they can't see their victims. They have to hear them out, which I think is also really cool. I was about to say this movie's Italian, but it's actually Spanish. But either way, it brings the charm of, foreign European movies of the time, the dubbing, the score, the over-the-top violence. I think that's all just a lot of fun. The atmospheric vibes. This is one that I'll be coming back to more often than not. I'm so happy that I did get around to watching this movie, and like I said, I'll be checking out some of the sequels when I get the chance to, but coming in at my number 5, I have Tombs of the Blind Dead. Coming in at my number 4, I have the movie Annabelle Comes Home. Thinking back on this one is what really pushed it to making this list today. For my review, it was actually only my second time rewatching this movie, and both times watching it, it kind of took me by surprise. It's 100% better than the first Annabelle movie. I'm actually not too sure if it's better than Annabelle Creations. I only say that because I haven't rewatched Annabelle Creations in a fair while. But I feel like it's probably more fun than Annabelle Creations. It keeps it simple and light, and it has plenty of quirks to pull you in. I remember when I finished rewatching this movie for my review last year, and I was thinking, it was kind of simple, and originally I had that as a negative, but then the more I thought about it, I'm like, but the movie was fun, and I had a good time watching it, and it managed to do all that while staying simple. I think that's actually a positive. Honestly, when thinking back on the franchise now, like the Conjuring universe as a whole, I think this comfortably makes the better half of the Conjuring universe of films. Now, is this movie going to blow you away? No, but it's simple, it's fun, it's entertaining, and it was good enough for me. I had a fun time. So coming in at my number 4, Annabelle Comes Home, maybe one in the Conjuring universe that, because it's a later sequel and the first Annabelle didn't do so well, Annabelle Creations sort of takes the limelight. I think this is one that flies under the radar. Getting into my top 3 and coming in at my number 3 spot, here I have Friday the 13th Part 2. Like Rosemary's Baby and The Birds, maybe an obvious choice to make this list, but I mean, I fucking love this entry in the Friday the 13th franchise. It's a movie I've seen more times than I can count, but every time I watch this movie, it's just so much fun and so entertaining. Honestly, you're pretty safe with any of the first 4 entries in the franchise, but this one to me is top 2, at least top 3. Like, I just fucking adore this movie. Rewatching it any time of the year, anytime I'm checking it out again, it's a breeze each time. I'll keep this one short because no shit, it's a good movie. I mean, it's Friday the 13th. It's fucking great. So this one doesn't really need to be noted. I'll keep it short. My number 3, Friday the 13th, Part 2. Coming into my number 2, I have the movie Prom Night from 1980. This is my double pack with the sequel as well, but we're talking about the first Prom Night movie here. This was one of my favourite rewatches of last year for sure, because I actually used to think this movie was fairly overrated, especially considering it's known as one of the most notable slashers of the 80s, regardless of what you personally think about the movie. But reviewing it this time around, pretty much everything fucking worked for me. Though if I have to highlight anything in particular, I'll say the characters. Like the kills and slashing aside, which honestly pretty much only comes into play pretty late in the movie, to be fair. Everything is just so fun and entertaining, and you actually can't forget the most gangster dance sequence in a movie ever. Jamie Lee Curtis smacked the shit out of that dance sequence. So fucking good. And it goes for like 4 minutes and the whole thing is entertaining. It's great. I remember rewatching this one for the review extremely clearly, and I remember as soon as this movie was over, I just wanted to watch it again, like straight away. Credits roll, I wanted to press play and watch it again. I just had such a fucking fun time with this movie. And again, another great example of giving movies second or third or fourth chances, because sometimes the next time around it just works. And again, this is a prime example because this is a movie I have seen, like I said, a handful of times before. And though I thought it was overrated, like I knew the characters well, I knew the story well, I knew this movie kind of beat for beat. Yet this time around, for some reason, there was a switch in my head that just flicked and I had a great fucking time. And like I said, one of the rewatches from last year I remember very clearly. Wanted to watch it again back to back. Just a great time. So it definitely won't be as long of a wait between when I come back and watch Prom Night again. But coming in at my number 2 is the original Prom Night from 1980. And coming in as my number 1, my favourite movie that I rewatched for last year, part of my random horror reviews, here I have Lights Out, which might be a surprise for some people, maybe not if you actually checked out my review for this movie, but this one has not left my mind since rewatching it through the year, and I can't understate how much fun I had with this movie. I remember this one being surprisingly good when I watched it back in the day when it first came out, but rewatching it for the review, it kind of outdid itself. I put it on late and I was trying to not fall asleep at the beginning just because I was so tired. But the movie, as it started getting going, it was just so good. I just fucking locked in and I probably couldn't fall asleep if I tried. I was just so engaged with what was going on. It just reminded me of a classic, charming mid 2000s paranormal movie packed with fun and scares and frights and whatever. When I say that, I mean movies like Darkness Falls, where it's not a good movie, but it's also kind of fun and everything. It's way better than Darkness Falls, in my opinion. Maybe I was trying to think of it before. The best way I can think to say it is like this reminds me of like an earlier version with the vibes of Malignant, where it's like a well-made paranormal B movie with plenty of charm and fun. Hopefully that translates like what I'm trying to say there. But the cast was great, the energy was fun, and like I said, for a movie that I was worried about falling asleep, I remember I put it on at like 1 in the morning, and I'm like, oh, fuck, was this the right idea? I was so fucking locked in. I had a great time. It kept me engaged. Absolutely flew by. Like perfect runtime for this movie as well. I just had a great time with Lights Out. Can't wait to check it out again. So coming in at my number 1, I have the movie Lights Out. So there we go, guys, through my list of top 10 movies that I rewatched last year, part of my random horror review series. Like usual, before I say my thanks and goodbyes, we'll do a quick little recap. So my number 10 was The Hills Have Eyes remake. My number 9 went to another remake, Hellraiser. My number 8 was The Monster Squad, the movie that I reviewed as part of my Halloween edition episode. Number 7 went to The Birds. Number 6 went to Rosemary's Baby. Like I said, if this list was based off how good of a movie it actually is, it would be number 1. But number 5, Tombs of the Blind Dead. Number 4, Annabelle Comes Home. Number 3, Friday the 13th Part 2. Second place went to the original Prom Night, 1980. And my number 1 went to Lights Out. So like I said, thank you for joining me for this top 10 video, guys. I appreciate it as always. Like I said, this is going to be my stacked January where all my recaps of last year and things like that come through, so make sure to be checking out my content. But for this video, let me know what your favorite horror movie review that I did for last year was. If there was any review that I did where you checked it out and that actually made you want to go and watch that movie, let me know what that title was in the comments below. Or if you're feeling up for it, let me know what movie you would like to see me review coming up into 2025. If there's a movie that you would like to hear me talk about, drop it in the comments below, guys, and I can't promise I'll get around to it, but I'll try. So thank you for joining me for this top 10 video, guys, and I'll see you for more content very, very soon.